Google recently updated their guidelines for service area businesses, and you can see there on my screen, hopefully you can read it. See if I can zoom in here a little bit. There we go. Now, you can see here that the guidelines are updated here under service area businesses there. And to me, actually, this, well, you'll see why I'm talking about this in just a second. But in general, I always follow any kind of news about Google policies, Google algorithms, Google guidelines regarding service area businesses, because that's an area that I personally am operating in a lot as far as my own lead generation business, separate from internet marketing. And so if you're in any kind of local SEO or lead generation or anything, you should really be watching anything having to do with service area businesses. Google's posting these guidelines. Obviously the assumption is people are trying to follow the guidelines and trying to work within the guidelines. But if you are not trying to work within the guidelines, as in I'm usually not, reading these guidelines can give you a lot of ideas for what sort of the boundaries are for what you're able to accomplish and what they're really after. So you can see here, we've got here a definition of service area businesses. Businesses serve customers at their location. Should have one page for the central office or location and designate a service area from that point. Service area businesses can't list a, quote, virtual office unless that office is staffed during business hours. Now, I kind of have a problem with this because on the one hand, normally Google will allow, say, for instance, an electrician who works out of their home to use their home address as their central office or central location, like the place where they receive the postcard, and then as long as they hide their address and give Google a service area around that address in the dashboard, usually Google's okay with it. The issue I see is that Google is clearly targeting people that use any kind of Regus office or any kind of virtual office, even if they actually rent a real office in that space. And they claim that the reason why is that that office is not staffed during business hours. And this clearly is an example of how Google doesn't understand service area businesses. Obviously an electrician, a solo electrician, like say a single guy operating out of his home, he is not going to staff that office during business hours. Even if he's working out of his home, he's going to spend the majority of time that he possibly can working out of his truck on site with clients, helping them with their electrical needs, and he's going to have a cell phone. And all his calls are going to be going to that cell phone no matter where he is. He's going to be picking up the phone where he is. And he's probably not going to be, not going to have paid staff sitting there. However, he still is available to take calls and to set up appointments and everything from wherever he is, whether he's driving in rush hour or he's at another client's home or on a job site or whatever. So it's a little confusing. They supposedly updated it, but to me it just caused an equal amount of confusion. Then the next paragraph, they talk about hybrid service area businesses that show their storefront address and designate a service area, blah, blah, blah. And then this little thing, Google will determine how to best display your business address based on your business information as well as information from other sources. So this is kind of the caveat where Google's basically saying we're going to do whatever we want. Here's the guidelines, but we're basically going to do whatever we want. There is a thread that I want to encourage you guys to read, because this kind of shows you what precipitated this change. And if you want this link to it, you can get there from the SEO Roundtable article on this topic, which I just showed you. I just went to it. And then there's this huge debate. You can see here it's got 9 pages. It's going back several weeks. Involved in this debate are virtual office owners, so people that actually are landlords that own a virtual office, and meaning, that virtual office, they've got, real rooms you can rent. They also have mailbox services where you don't actually rent a room, but you get a mailbox. There's hybrid services where you have a mailbox plus use of the conference room or a certain number of hours per week or whatever. So those guys are in the debate. You've also got some business owners in the debate that have gotten spanked. And they really bring up a good point in this debate, because mainly the point they bring up is kind of the same as the point I just brought up earlier. They don't use their home, so they're a solo operator. In this case, it's on the radon testing niche, and they've chosen not to base their business out of their home. Instead, they've chosen to base it out of this office space that they've rented, even though they're rarely there. To me, I don't get what the difference is between being rarely there at your home because you're always out on the job, or being rarely there at an office that you've rented somewhere. I don't get the difference. Google hasn't really explained it, and this is kind of why I'm passionate about service area businesses, because Google really doesn't provide a good option for them. And you can see right here, we got some really big names involved in this. We got Joy Hawkins, Helmut, Tim Capper. We got some big, and then we've got actually a Googler involved as well. Anyway, I would read through it just so you can really get an idea for what the issue is, and kind of getting inside Google's head about this. And you can even see, this is the Google Community Manager saying here, looking at the account for 5280 radon mitigation seems to have the address for the virtual office. Can you please connect with your client and ask them to update the address to their home address? I just don't understand what the point is of that. Because what's the difference? I really don't understand the difference. I believe this radon mitigation, now you have to read through the thread, but I believe they haven't just rented a mailbox. They've actually rented an office in this center, this office center, but they're rarely there. Of course, they're out testing people's homes for radon. So Google's specifically saying, can you update this to your home address? And it's like, why? I don't understand. They're rarely at home during the day, or rarely at the office that they rent during the day. So a lot of confusion in these guidelines as far as what is right and what is wrong. Even in Google's own guidelines, it's confusing and contradictory. Now, you can actually still have success with these virtual offices. And I've actually, had success myself with using virtual offices, but just realize Google still is against them, seems to have just a prejudice against the idea of any kind of office space, even if you're renting a room, but you're not there that much, even if you're actually renting a real office, maybe it's just a single room. Google does have a built-in prejudice against those types of rental agreements, even if you're not just only renting a box. Even if you're actually, actually renting an actual room, Google has a built-in prejudice against that and would rather have you use a home address with a hidden address with a service area than use a office address with a hidden area and a hidden address and a service area radius around it. I just don't understand why. I mean, they should just put in their guidelines, we're against any kind of hidden address in an office space or something like that, because it's basically the same thing, in my mind. Obviously, unless you're only just renting a box and you haven't actually rented a room, an office actual room, obviously that's clear. Then you're not actually, in no way do you have any physical presence at that address. I could understand that from Google's perspective, but I just don't understand the difference between the renting a room and hiding the address versus having a home and hiding the address. So anyway, I encourage you to read through this whole thread. It goes back, can really kind of give you an idea for the players. Even some of the sort of white hat crusaders that we've got here, Helmut and Joy and Tim, are also involved in it, but they don't seem to understand the service area business dilemma. And so just beware if you're dealing with that with your clients. You might have to walk on the wild side in order to really get these leads that you're looking for your clients or for yourself. Okay. And you can also read, okay, there's the actual guideline. There's also a debate. I don't know if anyone on here is part of the Local Search Pros. It's a great community. You can get great answers. You can also kind of keep your ear to the ground as far as what's going on in the local search space. A lot of big names in here answering questions and asking questions. I actually had a debate in here myself about this, and again, we get the standard answers that make no sense. Temporary offices are not acceptable. A solo electrician working from home can use a service area business listing, but you can't rent a room. You can't rent a room and hide the address. I just don't understand that. So anyway, I'm arguing with them on here, but I'm not sure if we'll ever get to the bottom of this. If you want to weigh in, though, on either that other thread that I showed you, it will help us to have some sensible people in here posting for on the behalf of the service area business themselves, because they're really not fairly represented, and anyone out here who's have clients in this arena knows that they just want to get the phone to ring, and all these details about the about the guidelines and stuff really seem so irrelevant, especially when your bottom line is affected. Actually, it looks like they closed this thread, so you can't post anymore in this thread. But you can post if you're in the local business community. You can post here, and you can also post in the actual SE Roundtable article. There's only a couple comments in there. I encourage you guys to get in there and just post some questions just so we can get some clarification on this. But bottom line, if you don't really care about the Google Terms of Service, which I don't tend to care that much, be very careful with virtual offices and as far away from a virtual office, the perception of a virtual office as you can be, do it. For example, if you can do a Google search for your business address with the word virtual office in the search box, and it comes up clearly with like a virtual office provider or a mailbox provider, you're in the danger zone. Okay, it's much better to rent. I've found guys on Craigslist that are renting space, renting a room in their office, or renting a desk or whatever, and they're sort of off the beaten path. That's a great way to go as far as it not being clearly a virtual office. in Google's mind. Even if you're renting a real room, I've had Google spank me. Just even I showed clearly I had rented an actual room, an actual space at that address, but just because the landlord was offering virtual office as well, virtual office services, mailbox services as well, Google would not allow me to rent a room at that address without suspending my listing. So you really want to stay away from anything that looks like a virtual office and try to stay away from big chains and stuff like that if you can. Or just know that, it's possible you're going to get spanked at any time. I know some people just go ahead and just do it anyway, and they just keep putting up new listings, with the mailbox services. That can work too, but that's that.